A very good morning to all. Myself, Dr. R. Vijayalakshmi, IKSC Coordinator of Wright School of Pharmacy. Welcome all the principals of various colleges, professors, and other faculty members to the fourth day session of our Faculty Development Program. Yesterday, Dr. Ramesh Jagadisan Sir has given his valuable speech on innovations driving quality, pharmacy education, research, and practice. Yesterday's session was thought-provoking on industry-academia collaboration. Today, Dr. S. Sriram Sir, Senior Professor, Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Coimbatore, is present here to talk on principles of problem-based learning in pharmacy education. Problem-based learning is the current trend in academics. Hope this session will kindle critical thinking among faculty. Now I request Dr. V.D. Sundar Sir, Professor and Head, Department of Pharmaceutical Technology, to introduce our guest speaker. Over to you, Sundar Sir.
I am very much honored and privileged to welcome our today's speaker, Dr. S. Sriram Sir, to this 5 days FDP program organized by Wright School of Pharmacy in association with IPA Rajahmundry branch. Dr. S. Sriram Sir is obtained bachelor degree from the Institute of Pharmaceutical Technology, Annamalai University in the year 1990. Sir worked as area manager in GlaxoSmithKline Limited and Cadila Healthcare Limited. Sir completed his post-graduation in pharmacology specialization from JSS College of Pharmacy, Ooty, and secured gold medal in Vem Pharmacy and got the Best Outgoing Student Award. Dr. S. Sriram Sir completed his doctoral program in the field of evaluation of adverse drug reaction and drug interaction monitoring. He joined the College of Pharmacy, Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Coimbatore, in the year 1995, and presently heading the Department of Pharmacy Practice at Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Coimbatore. Dr. S. Sriram Sir published 90 publications in various national and international journals for his credit. Sir received the Best Teacher Award from the Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR University. Sir is the advisory board member and reviewer for various national and international journals. Sir is doctoral committee member in various universities and board of studies member in various universities. Dr. S. Sriram Sir received award for Outstanding Pharmacy Faculty of the Year 2017, confirmed by the IPA Anantapura branch. Sir was appointed to serve as Secretary to the Bioethics Unit of the International Network of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics at Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Coimbatore. And Sir was nominated as Associate Secretary, Central Executive Council, Indian Pharmaceutical Association, Education Division for the year 2018-20. Sir was a life member for professional bodies at APTI, IHPA, IPA, IPGA, ISPOR. I request Dr. S. Sriram Sir to give his speech on today's topic, Principles of Problem-Based Learning in Pharmacy Education. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sundar, for your nice introduction. And also thanks to Vijayalakshmi Madam. At the outset, I'd like to thank the Wright School of Pharmacy for calling me to give a lecture on this topic. And it's always very important to note that teachers are being given proper guidance and proper intervals, because once we become teachers, most of the time we stop learning. So I wanted to say everyone that learning is a continuous process throughout life. Lifelong learning is the best way to keep ourselves engaged. And always I'm happy to be introduced as a pharmacist and also as a teacher in pharmacy field. It is very, people say it's a very noble profession, teaching, all those things are fine. But I personally feel that the satisfaction in teaching comes immediately after you come out of the class, because you know whether you have taught the students properly. The self-satisfaction is very important, especially in teaching. You can achieve the self-satisfaction very, very much. And with this juncture, I'd like to go into my presentation. Let us start with problems for problem-based learning. Nothing wrong with that. So, once again, I welcome you. A hearty welcome to all of you. right? The topic given is Principles of Problem-Based Learning in Pharmacy Education. So I've told you that I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm going to just kindle your minds to know, because everything is available on the internet. I'm going to just tell you how to think the students. So education is not learning the facts, but it is just training the mind to think. I've given you one option, that is which one you like. Most of you, I'm sure that 100% you like only the left one, that is those who are happy. Whomever we come across in life, we want them to be happy. We also want to be happy with them, right? In our body, we have got a lot of organs inside. It keeps working without asking us. You take heart, it keeps beating 70 to 75 times per minute, right? You take brain, it keeps on getting the oxygen and keep doing its work. Each and every organ, the kidney keeps excreting whatever it is to be. So all the internal organs are working without asking us. But we, as human beings, we want some momentum. We want somebody to tell us, you work, you do this work, or you don't do like this. See, heart keeps adjusting according to whatever your needs. Say, for example, you run fast, your blood requirement or the oxygen requirement is more, it keeps pumping more. So accordingly, all the organs function according to your needs. Right? As long as we don't disturb them, they are not going to lose its function. So similar to that, we have to understand in our body, whatever organs inside, everything is having a connection. They keep talking to each other. So for example, the mitochondria, they say, I'm the powerhouse of the cell, I keep doing my work. Right? So the nucleus, it says that I'm the basis of you, the entire cell. So each and every organ in the body, the inside, it keeps giving signals among themselves. You would have studied about circadian rhythm. Say by around 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon, we get hungry because of the acidic secretion, from the parietal cells in the stomach. So they start secreting at proper time, isn't it? So everything is happening inside the body according to whatever has to happen, according to the timings, the circadian rhythm, the body clock, everything is exactly functioning. But we from outside, we were not able to function properly because there are a lot of literatures which says that stress is the major reason why a person could not perform properly. When a teacher wants to take good class, he or she should be able to take the class without any stress. At the same time, the student should be made happy learning. When I say happy learning, just see the face of this small child who is holding a cake. The entire world for this child is that small chocolate cake. A teacher, whenever he or she enters into the classroom, the entire world for the teacher is that classroom. See, we have to have the responsibility that around 30 to 40 students or 60 students are there in front of us who always listen to us, and they'll be carried away by what we say. Isn't it? So happiness is very, very important when you start teaching. I'll take one example of this teacher. She is a teacher. Her name is Louise Hay. When she was identified with breast cancer in the age of 54, she felt that, okay, whatever it is has come to me, cancer has come to me. Anyway, I'm going to die in another 3 to 4 months. Let me be happy. Let me make others happy. Let me give whatever I have. Let me share my knowledge. Let me share my things. Let me share my money. Everything she started sharing. And once she shared her happiness without thinking of the ailment what she had got, I'll tell you, my dear friends, she lived till 92 years. Last August 2016 only she died. Even though doctors have told her that within 2 to 3 months she is going to die, she could survive because of the coming out of the stress. In our body, we have got lot of chemical substances. We say hormones. There are few hormones which will secrete more when you are happy. We call it as happy hormones, like dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, oxytocin, DOSC. I call it as DOSC, dose. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin. So these hormones are happy hormones. So whenever we are happy, these hormones are more. But whenever we are in fear or in stress, adrenaline secretion will be high. The cortisol secretion will be high. So all depends on your mental makeup. Again, when I say a teacher has to be happy inside the class, then only they can take the class forward. But happiness is again a choice. Happiness is again a choice. Everybody's happiness is different. Every person's happiness is different. Some people are happy listening to the music. Some people are happy watching a movie. Some people are happy diving in a pool. Some people are happy when they go for a long ride. Some people are happy when they work out in the gym for their satisfaction. Some people are happy playing with their friends. Some people are happy in dancing. Some people feel happy when they keep on counting the money, which is sort of happiness for them. Some people are happy when they read a good book. Books are the very good friends. And you give you a credit card, the female are very happy when they go and do some purchase. Photo shoot gives happiness to few of them. Chatting with friends, real happiness in this COVID-19 period. Doing some group activity is happiness for few of them. Traveling with their friends gives happiness. Chasing jewels gives happiness. Okay, so many different types of happiness are there for so many people. But what is the real happiness? I tell you, my dear friends, the real happiness is helping others without expecting anything from them. When you help somebody, knowingly that they will not be able to help you in return, then that is the real happiness. And for a teacher, the real happiness is in the classroom if you are able to make the students understand the small concepts. That is the real happiness. At the end of the hour, you feel that satisfaction, yes, I have taken a good class. That is the real happiness for a good teacher. Now let me come into the subject. When you teach the student, there are two different types of teaching. One is called as passive learning, another is active learning. You just go the didactic learning, you go to the classroom, you see the students, you talk, you write on the board, all those things are fine. But normally, people generally remember only 10% of what you talk, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, and 50% of what they see and hear, and 70% what they say and write, and 90% of what they experience, the practice-based learning. In pharma education, there are lots and lots of subjects we study. I always tell my teacher colleagues, this is one course, pharmacy is one course where lot of subjects are studied. More than 25 to 30 subjects are studied in one course. No other course in the world, I can say, that it has this many number of subjects. We study everything, starting from biochemistry, pathophysiology, anatomy, pharmacology, therapeutic, everything we study, right? But at the end of the study, whatever we studied, it should help in application-oriented knowledge. That is, we should develop the skill when it comes in the form of therapy. Education, pharmacy education, there are two types, knowledge-based education and practice-based education. And this knowledge-based education, whenever I say the term knowledge, anybody can gain knowledge. Because if a student does not attend the class, he can go, he can search in the internet, he can read the books, he can very well understand. Only thing is it may take some more time for him to understand, that's all. He can very well get the knowledge. But skill is something different from knowledge. Skill is practice-oriented knowledge. What is practice-oriented knowledge? That is, whatever he has gained, the knowledge, if he is able to practice it in the day-to-day life, then that is called as skill. The education should be not just giving the knowledge, it should be able to make him think and it should be able to make him a skilled person. So for that, this problem-based learning has come out nicely in abroad countries. They have used it and they have got a very good result when they use problem-based learning in their teaching learning process. So what is this problem-based learning? This problem-based learning is nothing but, instead of didactic learning, it gives a problem to the student, and the student in a group, they will be analyzing the problem, and once they analyze the problem, they should be able to come out with some points, some triggers will be given by the teachers. The teacher will not teach fully. Please understand, the teacher is not going to teach fully. They are going to just give them a case or a problem, so that the student have to, in a group, they have to discuss about the case or the problem. They have to come out with lot of points. What might be the reason, why, what, when, how, all these things, the student-centered. So this problem-based learning is a student-centered study. What is the difference between this normal didactic learning, conventional learning, and this problem-based learning? So this conventional learning gives knowledge about the principles, concepts, and information regarding a particular subject. Whereas this skill-based learning, that is a problem-based learning, gives the ability of applying the information in a context to improve the patient care. So it's experiential learning for the students. In general, or in simple, we can say that integrated knowledge. Integrating what? Integrating the theory and practice. In case of problem-based learning, the student is made to ask questions: why, what, when, how, where. All these questions has to come into the mind of the students. You just say, for example, a particular tablet, say Dolo 650, right? So this particular tablet, everybody knows. Dolo 650 is paracetamol. Dolo 650 is available in the 500 milligrams, 650 milligram. Everybody knows. But one problem will keep in this. Just give a sentence: the manufacturer of Dolo 650 is minting money like anything. So now the student, instead of asking directly who is the manufacturer of Dolo 650, he is given a problem that yes, this guy is minting money. Then it gives a trigger in the mind of the student: who is the manufacturer of Dolo 650? Yes, everybody knows Dolo 650. Everybody says that they are spending a lot of money. People are consuming this particular product more. Even a layman knows Dolo 650. Now the trigger what you have given as a teacher is they are minting money. Then the student will get a trigger that, okay, who is that manufacturer? They will go and find out, and they will come to know that Micro Labs is the manufacturer of Dolo 650. Then another trigger you can give: the dose of Dolo 650 is 650 or 500. So it's available as both 500 and 650. So what is the difference? Then slowly the trigger starts. They go and refer. They come to know that it is paracetamol. The content is paracetamol, and the dose is 15 milligram per kg body weight, 1.5. So according to the body weight, they can multiply body weight into 15, 1.5. That many milligram is the dose of paracetamol. So slowly when you identify, slowly when you give triggers, the teacher has to give trigger to the students. So in problem-based learning, it is enhancement of development of certain qualities in children. When I say children, the students. The development of quality in students can happen. What are the qualities the students can develop? They can develop the critical thinking ability. They can develop the critical thinking ability, right? They can develop leadership qualities. The self-directed learning can happen. The team working skills, interpersonal and professional skills, management skills, collaborative learning, English speaking qualities, and practicing empathy. In normal teaching in the classroom, blackboard teaching, what we do is we tell them something, we explain them something, we put it in the blackboard, whereas the student, one or two students, you ask them questions and they will be answering. Whereas here in problem-based learning, you allow all the students the equal probability of thinking. You ask all the students to talk. So, lot of teamwork skills will be there, self-directed learning, and English speaking quality also improves. So here, I'm just telling you one problem, whatever you give to the student. And say, for example, I've given a condition called as phocomalia. That's all. But the teacher wants to teach the students about the thalidomide, about the thalidomide tragedy, about the adverse drug reaction monitoring program, about the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, who is monitoring the adverse drug reaction program in the country. Lot of things the teacher is having behind his mind to teach the students. Instead of teaching them directly all these things, what a teacher does is, he or she gives a trigger. What is the trigger? Trigger is nothing but this particular phocomalia. When I just give this trigger, phocomalia, just give the topic phocomalia and ask the group of students to discuss. So they have to go refer, they have to come back, and they will sit and discuss. And what is this phocomalia? This phocomalia, everybody knows it's a teratogenicity. But beyond the points, whatever the students come and collect, the teacher should be able to give some extra information. That is, again, facilitation. It is not teaching, it is facilitating them. The extra information what a teacher can give, the teacher can very well give this. Because of thalidomide, this phocomalia happened. More than 10,000 children, they were born with teratogenicity. But in America, not even a single child is born with phocomalia condition. Why? It is because of a pharmacologist named Kelsey, Frances Fulham Kelsey. So she is the one, she wanted more information about the drug, thalidomide, before it is getting marketed in the country, in America. So because of her interference, the drug was not approved to market in America, and it did not affect the pregnant women. So the drug was taken by the pregnant women, right, for morning sickness. All these informations will be extra information what you will be giving the students. So the objective is to talk to the students regarding the pharmacovigilance, adverse drug reaction program, all those things. But the trigger what we have given, what you have to give to the students is just one word, ask them to come with a lot of ideas, whatever they know about it, they need to talk about it. So that is problem-based learning. You have to introduce the problem. These are the steps in problem-based learning. You have to introduce the problem, search for the facts and ideas, make the team, make the group of the students to search for the facts and ideas, let them have a brainstorming session within them, and they address the learning needs, come to solve the problem, and at last they have to finally briefing. So in this problem-based learning, there are different methods are there. These are the taxonomy of PBL, problem-based learning. There are different types of educational methods are there. One is lecture-based case study, where the lecture will be given by the staff followed by a case. Whereas the another one is case-based lecture. Here, the case will be given first, followed by the lecture. Similarly, another method is called as case method. In this case method, the student is coming prepared to the class after studying the case. Case will be given one day prior in advance. He can come to the class studying the case. Another is modified case-based. Modified case-based, the only difference is he'll be given the case and he'll be studying and coming to the class, but at the same time, during the discussion, little changes can be made in the case, and accordingly he can be triggered to tell us the solution. That means in the case you can change something so that how the treatment changes, how the treatment goes, the line of treatment changes by modifying. So that is called as modified case-based approach. And what we are going to learn today is the problem-based case approach. And this problem-based case approach allows free thinking, the reasoning capacity, critical thinking ability in the student. You give a problem, ask them to analyze, go refer and come back, and give them a particular time period. After they discuss themselves, they come back and they discuss about the problem. And the teacher should act as a facilitator. Another is called as closed loop or iterative method of teaching. That is, when the problem is given to them, they have to enact, they have to reflect the same thing, whatever they understand. Then they themselves will be analyzing. So in case of problem-based learning, it develops a lot of abilities, the problem-solving skills, thinking skills, teamwork skills, time management skill, communication skill, and computing skill. So these are the skills what is developed because of PBL. A lot of literatures, when I go through, they have very good informations that in America, in US, the respiratory therapy programs, they find that this problem-based learning helped the students' performance very well, and they get registered, they get passed in the respiratory therapist examination. To get passed in that, this PBL had helped them a lot. Even in dental curriculum, it showed significant improvement in critical thinking, especially when it is done in the small group setting and self-assessment and the teamwork. Even in nurses, they studied, they found that it was a strong suggestion that problem-based learning in the curriculum had given a significant improvement. When I say problem-based learning, what are the parts of problem-based learning? What are the requirements for this? There are 4 major requirements. One is the facilitator. The facilitator is the teacher. Always the facilitator is the teacher. And when I say facilitator, I'll explain you what are the qualities, what should be the facilitator's qualities. Next, a student group. A facilitator, a teacher should be there, group of students should be there, and also the problem, you have to take out the correct problem, triggers or problems or the task, and the session should be carried out. Now, let us see one by one. The first is the facilitator. Facilitator is nothing but the teacher. When the teacher acts as a facilitator, he should be able to take up the problem to the students, and he should be able to trigger the minds of the students. He should not directly give the answer. I've told you so many things. See, say for example, you give a drug chart. In the drug chart, what you wanted to learn them is, you want to learn them regarding atorvastatin, for example. And the facilitator, what they have to do is, they give the drug chart, they have to say that myopathy, just a trigger, myopathy, the word. So they should be able to go through which suits this particular drug's myopathy, and when they have to come out with the answer that atorvastatin causes myopathy. The maximum dose is 80 milligram. Above that, it can cause rhabdomyolysis. So all these triggers will be facilitated by the teacher. The teacher's main role here is not just conveying the knowledge. The teacher's main role is they have to facilitate them learning to get the proper knowledge and skill. So this is supported by the process of cognitive and metacognitive development, and this is also assisted by playing a role of a learner. So teacher, he will be silently watching what they are discussing, and in between, whenever they feel it a little difficult, they should be act as a facilitator. They give them some points so that the discussion should carry on. The student groups. When you say student group, the student group should facilitate the process of learning. A small group will be selected, and these students, they have to have the self-directed learning initiatives. They should be able to engage lifelong learning qualities, and this group learning facilitates them in communication skills, in knowledge acquisition, having a good teamwork, problem solving, independent responsibility for learning, sharing information, and respect for each other. When I wanted to say triggers, problem, you have to give them some problem. So these triggers should be selected in such a way that they will be critically analyzed by the student. It should be the interest of the students. The student should develop interest in these triggers. Say for example, there are different types of triggers are there. Open type trigger is there. That is, directly you ask them a question and ask them to go through the points and discuss. Instead of that, single blind type trigger. Single blind type trigger is, you will not be telling directly, only you know what you want. And accordingly, the student will go search, discuss, and they'll get back to you. So double blind type trigger. So this trigger will mask both the teacher and the student about that particular thing, what they want. Even to make you understand very properly, I'll say that you have to coordinate or correlate a particular trigger with whatever is to be taught to the students. So essential attributes to formulate an effective trigger. So whenever you wanted to have a trigger, I told you a classical example, phocomalia. When I wanted to teach them about Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, ADR monitoring, what are the ADRs, what is causality, so many things, I start with phocomalia. So like this, you should have prior knowledge about all the activities, what you wanted to do. You have to elaborate, and the relevant context you should be able to formulate. You should be able to integrate the knowledge and the skill. You should be able to have the interest in the subject matter, and the faculty should be very well inclined towards the objectives of the problem-based learning. Here I'm giving you one example. Suppose you are a chemistry teacher, right? You wanted to talk about recrystallization, right? So you wanted to say them that how the crystals are formed according to the cooling of the solution. You just give them a trigger, factors result in crystallization. This is the trigger what you have given. They have to go for brainstorming session. They have to form a group. They have to talk about what is crystallization, what are the factors, all those things. When they talk about it, they'll be talking more of the regarding particular things like solvent, solute, solution, physical condition, the time available for crystal growth, all these things. Once they discuss this much, you have to narrow down the choice slowly. That is, you have to facilitate the group discussion and slowly bring them, select some variables and tell them. Say, for example, the number of nucleation sites, the temperature, light intensity, the nature of solvent, all these things they will be talking about. Just the idea is the student generate the possible hypothesis and the possible testing is done. For example, the smaller crystals form and slow the rate of cooling of solution, then the crystals, larger crystals are produced. So here, so the conclusion can be discussed and the experiments can be done accordingly. Suppose he's a pharmacology teacher. Here one example is there. A student with a history of asthma was prescribed with propranolol for management of performance-induced anxiety before exams. Later, there was an exacerbation of asthma. Identify the cause. Now, the common trigger for asthma, what are the common triggers for asthma? In general, we know that allergies and drugs can cause asthma. Later, they narrowed down the search and they found the exact trigger for this particular patient. And the facilitator has to say, what is the role of propranolol here? Propranolol can be given. See, a lot of FDA approved indications are there. Propranolol can be given for, in this case, it is given to reduce anxiety, the management of the anxiety before the examination. Not to induce, it is to reduce the anxiety here. Whereas propranolol also acts as antihypertensive agent. Propranolol can be also given for migraine. So what is the indication for this particular patient or the student? That has to be, first of all, underlined. And the exact trigger has to be found. And they have to come to a conclusion that this propranolol is the one which would have triggered the patient asthma, who is already having asthma, and this propranolol should not be given. They should not have given this drug. That is a beta-2 antagonist, non-selective beta-2 blocker. Beta blocker should not be given. So you can take few examples. The teacher has to work on few examples and they have to give the triggers to the student discussion. Here there is another example. If you are a Sutix teacher, here the effervescent granules, suppose you are talking about effervescent granules in the class, you can very well say that there is patient non-compliance in this taking this effervescent granules. That is the trigger you give. Then they have to go and find out what is the problem with effervescent granules, how to take these effervescent granules, how to prepare it, right? What is the problem, why the patient can develop the patient non-compliance. And at last you come to know that it produces bitter taste if the effervescence is reduced, and after the effervescence is taken, it produces bitter taste. So the conclusion is it should be consumed along with the effervescence so that the bitter taste will not be there. Compliance, patient compliance will be more. Let me come with the pharmacy practice. Suppose there is a case. You need to discuss the case. Say, for example, a male patient of 50 years old, right? You give them all the information, complaints of chest pain, retrosternal pain, radiating to left upper limb with restlessness. Now, the BP is also given, the serum creatinine value is also given, the social history also is given, whether he is a smoker or not, how long he is a smoker, and his medication history and medical history have to be clearly understood. He is a known case of coronary artery disease, and he is recently identified to have hypertension. Now, the drug given to them is clopidogrel and propranolol. Propranolol is propranolol. Now, what is the drug of choice for this particular patient when you wanted to manage blood pressure? So you give a case to the student and ask them to discuss about the case and let them go through. First, when they discuss about the case, they will start with this hypertension, the stage, because newly identified hypertensive patient, they want to treat the patient. So which drug is the ideal drug? When I say this hypertension, there are different types of hypertension are there, essential hypertension, primary, secondary, a lot of types are there, gestational. So all those things they'll be discussing. And they come back, they say this particular patient has got, according to the values, according to JNC 7 classification, he's classified as stage 1 hypertension. And for stage 1 hypertension, which are all the drugs which can be prescribed? There are a lot of category of drugs. There are 10 different category of drugs which are prescribed for the management of hypertension. In this case, which drug will be suitable? Any hypertensive case we have, first choice of drug we say thiazide diuretics. But if the particular patient is having problem of gout or hyperuricemia, the thiazide diuretics cannot be given. So all these things have to be kept in mind. They'll be discussing all the factors. Say diuretics, what are the problem with diuretics? Diuretics can cause hypocalcemia, hypokalemia, hyponatremia. They can cause agranulocytosis. Whenever they are injected, they should be given at the rate of 4 milligram per minute. It should not be given more than that, IV infusion. If it is given more than that, what will happen? It can cause transient deafness. All the details regarding the thiazide diet, they don't concentrate only on this particular patient. It is overall they will be studying, they will be discussing. So one by one, the pharmacist or the student should be allowed to learn in problem-based learning individually. Say for example, thiazide diuretics, a lot of problems are there. So these are the problems with thiazide diuretics. You cannot give this thiazide diuretics to this particular patient. Next choice is AC inhibitor. AC inhibitor, it also has problems like hyperkalemia. 3% of the patients develop angina because of AC inhibitor, can cause proteinuria. So all these makes the drug not a good choice. ARBs, they can decline the renal function, hyperkalemia is there, not a good choice for this patient. These beta blockers, they have to be used with caution in the patients with bradycardia, hypoglycemia and peripheral vascular disease. So this particular patient, what about calcium channel blockers? This calcium channel blockers doesn't produce any electrolyte disturbance because the patient is already having coronary artery disease, and so calcium channel blockers may be the good choice for this particular case. So like this, individual case discussions have to happen. Here is another case I'll quickly go through. The known case of diabetes and hypertension with atrial fibrillation and cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. The complaint of melena, on examination, abdominal distension is there, right? So these are the drugs given to this particular patient, and the INR value is more. So what should be done? When they discuss, they should be able to know why this INR value has increased. These two combination drugs, they have to reduce. They have to reduce the warfarin dose 20 to 50% so that the INR value can be modified. So this is what we want the student to learn, but we have to make it as a case, make them a discussion, and then come out with a lot of solution. Here are a few examples I'll give you. Levofloxacin, fluoroquinolone. It should never be combined with NSAIDs. If it is combined with NSAIDs, it can cause congestive cardiac failure, or it can cause convulsions, fits, epilepsy. Lot of reports are there. So this is what you want the student to learn. Suppose if a teacher, as a facilitator, if you want the student to learn that these two combinations are deadly combinations, then how to start? What they have to do is, they have to say that which are the drugs causing convulsions. We know drugs for the treatment of convulsion, but if you give a trigger, drugs causing convulsion, then they will come across these fluoroquinolones. And these fluoroquinolones, if it is not used properly, they can cause convulsion. At the same time, the drug, when they combine other drugs like NSAIDs with these fluoroquinolones, more chances of getting epilepsy is there. So the triggering thing, the particular teacher has to create the trigger or the problem and then give it to the students so that the students discuss, they learn, they come back, and the teacher will be facilitating. That is the basis of problem-based learning. Similarly, rabiprazole clopidogrel combination is a deadly combination. It's a major drug interaction. It should never be given together. The patient may develop stroke, lot of articles are there. So if the teacher as a facilitator wants the student to learn about this, very well, he or she can take up the problem, make it as a trigger, go for the group discussion and give them the information. Here another trigger point is there. Normally in urinary tract infection, these two combinations are given, nitrofurantoin and citralca. Right? Citralca is to alkalinize the urine, nitrofurantoin is the urinary antiseptic. So when these combinations are given in the prescription, the patient will be taking it together. But if it is taken together, what happens is nitrofurantoin requires acidic medium. In acidic medium, it is in unionized form and it can work nicely. But if it is taken along with citralca, what happens is citralca makes the medium alkaline and reduce the activity of nitrofurantoin so that the urinary tract infection is not cured. Even though both the drugs are good for UTI, it should not be taken together, spacing should be given. So like this, lots and lots of examples are there. You can make the student trigger by taking these examples. Another example here is, what I want the student to learn is pioglitazone should never be combined with insulin. Along with insulin, pioglitazone should not be given. It can cause congestive heart failure. Every lot of literatures are there. When you want the student to learn this, you have to make it as a problem. Don't give them directly what it is, right? Make it as a trigger problem, ask them to discuss, and then come back and you can explain them the details. Lot of triggers are there. Just I'm giving you a few examples. Statins induce diabetes. How the statins can induce diabetes. Right? We just give the trigger as statin induced diabetes. Then let them go, find out the mechanism, all those things, let them discuss. During the discussion, they'll find out which statin can cause more diabetes, what is the mechanism, what sort of physiological changes which happens when statins are taken in the body. All those things they'll be learning. Similarly, aspirin in the management of cancer. Recently, aspirin is said to be in the management of cancer, especially in Cancer Research Institute in UK. So we can make it as a trigger, ask them to go, refer a lot, come back, and we can discuss as a problem. This is one thing which I want to tell the teachers, because most of the times when they work in the hospital, they don't know the dose of insulin. How the doctors choose the dose of insulin, because it is individualized. Depending on the sugar level, it is individualized. In general, there are few formulas which has to be taught to the students. What are those things? Whenever insulin dose has to be calculated, it has to be multiplied with the body weight. Suppose if body weight, 0.55 into the total body weight. That will be the approximate dose of insulin. If it is in pounds, in abroad countries, the body weight is estimated in pounds. If it is in pounds, weight in pounds divided by 4. When you say this particular dose of insulin, there is a scale, sliding scale. The student should be also made aware about the sliding scale and how many, by 1 unit, by giving 1 unit of insulin, how many milligrams of the sugar is dropped down in the blood. To calculate that, there are few formulas like rule of 1500, rule of 1800. If the teacher wants to make them understand all these formulas, then he has to make a trigger. He has to say that, yes, I wanted to know this 1 unit of insulin, how it is going to reduce. Then they will go search and they'll come out with all these formulas. Here I am giving just one problem, a trigger. A diabetic and hypertensive patient receiving thiazide diuretics with insulin and atenolol, but sugar is not in control. Even though a diabetic patient, insulin is given, sugar is not in control. What might be the problem? So here, thiazides, they diminish the insulin response. Here the problem is the diuretic which is given along with insulin and potentiate the hypertensive effect of beta block. Another problem here is a hypertensive patient taking AC inhibitor and theophylline. They ask for ibuprofen and cetirizine for body pain in the community pharmacy, and BP is not controlled. Ibuprofen decreases the action of AC inhibitors. So this is what you wanted to understand, that you want the student to understand. Ibuprofen reduces, or analgesics reduces the action of AC inhibitors. This is what you want to make the students understand. So you make it as a problem and give the student, let them refer and come back. I'll just tell you, if you want the students to know about this particular thing which is issued by the government, Jana Shruti stores are open now. Generic medications are there in the market. If the teacher wants the student to know about generic medications, they can make it as a trigger and ask them to do it. They can say, what is the difference between generic and brand name? So they will go and check all the similarities and differences. They will go through the differences, they will go into the net, they will find out what are the similarities. I'm not going well in detail because of lack of time. I'm just telling you what the teacher can do. So they can go into the trigger point they can give, make the student work on all these things. The teacher can also contribute few from their side. When it was launched by the government of India, right? When was the first Jana Shruti store opened, right? All these things the teachers can give extra information to the students. In the trigger, you can very well ask who is manufacturing all these for the government. When you say if only few organizations are manufacturing it for the government, once they manufacture, who is going to take care of the quality of all these things? That is again a trigger. We should know that there may be a laboratories, the National Accreditation Board for testing and calibration laboratories. They are the one who is testing the quality and assuring the quality of all these things. In the meantime, when they discuss about Jana Shruti, generic medication, brand medication, all those things, the teacher can give extra knowledge like this. See, Ranbaxy and Sun Pharma, they are merged now. They are the first Indian pharmaceutical company to recognize and take advantage of the generic market. So after the acquisition by Sun Pharma, the company's net worth is this much. Other Indian companies who are there into generic marketing, who are in the other companies like Reddy's and Cipla. So according to a recent analysis, the Indian generic market, how much is expected to increase. All these are the extra informations the facilitator can give. And also the latest informations they can go for any the drugs which are declared of not standard quality in the market. All these are extra informations which is not available in the books, but the trigger has to be given and they can be asked to refer and come. The teacher facilitator can give the details. So there was an issue last year that N-nitrosodimethylamine, which is one of the component in this Valsartan, right? So this all the entire batch is withdrawn from the market. So give it as a trigger, ask them or make them learn in the group a lot of information regarding this particular issue. Similar to Dr. Reddy Laboratories, atorvastatin, calcium was withdrawn from the market. Nearly 236,000 bottles of this is withdrawn. So please find out what is the problem, give them the trigger, make them work more, make them discuss more, and then get back to the teacher of the facility. So traditional learning is just telling what we need to know, memorize it, and problem assigned to illustrate how to use it. Whereas the problem-based learning, the major advantage is you give the problem first, then they go, they refer, they discuss, they identify what we need to know for the problem and learn and apply it to solve the problem. So learning is experience, everything else is just information. So try to learn PBL for better learning. It's going to be your future. If it is problem-based learning, the student can learn happily. So where to start? You may think anything big has to start from a small thing. So try to be very positive. The first step in the evolution is to believe in yourself. Yes, we teachers can do a lot because we can motivate the students and we can see them growing. So thank you so much for the patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your patient explanation of each and every step of problem-based learning.
Thank you.
Emotions and chemistry of hormones are very well explained. Helping others is the true happiness by making a student understand. It is the duty of the teacher, and by doing their duty with wholeheartedly, we get that happiness. Very well explained, sir. Thank you. How to trigger the students to create critical thinking with examples. It was really awesome, sir. And the role of facilitator, the various ways to provide extra information and latest information, very well illustrated. So thank you so much for this. Sir, there are a few questions. Can I
Yes,
please
madam.
ask you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Give suggestions to create stress-free environment for the students in the classroom.
See, when the stress comes when you expect something from them and they were not able to meet out the expectation. Suppose the teacher asks them to study and come tomorrow, I'm going to conduct test. Right. So that particular hour when it comes, immediately the people are stressed. They will feel that, oh, I have not studied. I don't know what I'm going to write today. Somehow we have to manage. Ask some other students, you come and sit near me, help me. All those things are stress only. Instead of that, this stress environment has to be made easy by the teacher, making themselves into group and discuss. There are a lot of ways by which the teachers, I told you, no, these teachers have to be just as facilitators. They need not teach much. Students, they have a lot of capability to go, learn, come back with a lot of information because the students are time, the students have energy, the students are motivated, they have the momentum, everything is there, right? So once the student is given a topic, group them, just group them, make them to discuss. Because I've experienced with my students, when I give them a topic and say, okay, you have to come and discuss, you have to ask questions on this particular topic. Say, for example, I'll say about diabetes. So both the group people, they have to come prepared. They have to prepare 15 questions each. Right. So this person, this particular A group will ask one question for which the B group has to answer. Right. So it is nothing very this one. In between, if they were not able to answer or if they answer wrongly, the facilitator or the teacher can very well explain that. So a lot of things can happen to keep the environment free and happy learning. See, learning, everybody will pass, I'm telling you. The teacher's role is not to make the student pass. Teacher's role is make them understand, make them as a skilled person. Once they go out, they will be able to manage. Say when they see a prescription, say for example, the prescription containing a particular product, say febuxostat, right? Immediately they will be able to say what is the mechanism of febuxostat, what is the disadvantage of febuxostat, what is the recent findings of febuxostat. Now allopurinol is better than febuxostat, even though febuxostat 40 mg has come now, allopurinol 100 mg is there already for a long time. Very well, the discussion, only by discussion on the latest things, because whatever is there in the books, it is getting updated nowadays. Right? Updation is required and only the teacher can do the updates. Once you update them, once you give them the basic information and then update with the latest information, then it will be interesting for the students, I believe.
One more question, sir. How to enhance critical thinking skills among the students?
That's what we need to plan a lot. Say, for example, when a teacher has wanted to talk something about a particular topic tomorrow in the class, he has to create the situation. Say, for example, immediately whenever they come into the classroom, they should not start directly, right? They have to make them think. Say, for example, you ask the student, did you have breakfast today? The student says, yes, I had breakfast. How are your parietal cells working? When you say, how are your parietal cells working? Then he will start thinking, what is parietal cells? Oh, parietal cells are the one which is lining the stomach. Then what is the role of parietal cells? Slowly it increases the HCl secretion, right? So I tell them, yeah, parietal cells are increasing, very good. But there is one more thing which have to be taken into memory, that is IF, intrinsic factor, which is also from parietal cells. Then they will start about intrinsic factor. It is not like a class. It should be like a story. It should be like a discussion. It should be like case-based learning. Bring the student into that. Once you ask student, how did you start? You ask the student by asking whether you had your food today. You want in mind that you want to teach them about HCl secretion, parietal cells, intrinsic factor, methemoglobinemia, so many things you want to teach them today. But the teacher has to plan that particular day what I want the student to learn, and ultimately, if you can teach, then it is a critical based or problem based learning.
Is it possible to create problem based learning in large groups around 40 to 50?
Yeah, but the only thing is we have to group them into 3-4 groups. The students should be grouped because small group is always better for problem based learning. That is what they do in medicine. medical students, if you see, micro learning happens. Micro learning is whenever they go to the practical classes, if you see, 3 or 4 students will be given on preceptor. They will be sitting and discussing a particular topic, and the marks given also will be 2 marks, 4 marks, 10 marks maximum for that discussion. Right, for that particular day discussion, 2 marks will be provided. It's micro learning. They call it as micro learning, or individualized small group learning is better always.
One more question, sir. What are the sources we have to provide for finding the answer?
No, they can. It is like open book system. It is like open book system. Once a trigger is given, they can go. They can refer any resources, either online or books, or whatever the resources they can have. I'm telling you very frankly, students know a lot of resources than us. They have all the books in soft copy. They know where to go and search immediately. See, either drug interaction or ADR, whatever you give. Only thing is you have to motivate them. Otherwise, they will say, sir, I will do it tomorrow, all those things. They know a lot of resources. They come back with a lot of ideas. Only thing is we should spend some time with them so that the students can be motivated.
Good question, sir. The last question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the student's perception towards problem-based learning?
Student perceptive, again, it depends on the teacher, I'm telling you. Right? It is up to the teacher to make them very engaged, and it should not be boring for the student. Right? The teacher should always be a motivator. Right? Student perspective, I'm telling you, if you ask the student, you note down, you write down, did you do the assignment? Did you study and come? I will keep test tomorrow. So all these things students don't like. Even when we were students, we did not like. Right? So instead of that, just go with them, go with the flow. Say, you have to have the problem or the trigger in such a way that they don't get bored. Suppose you want to talk about a particular antibiotics today in the class, right? Chemotherapy or some antibiotic you want to talk. Very well, you can start like this. Yesterday I was going through the paper. There it is mentioned that salads are good for health. What is your idea? Then the students will say, yeah, salads are very good. Yeah, we take salad, sir. Carrot salad is good. Then slowly you incorporate, even in salad, they have found some bacteria in Chennai somewhere. They have found some bacteria. Oh, salad itself, bacteria is there. We thought it is very good. Slowly the conversation should go. Then we come to know that, yeah, it's the MCR1 gene and it is colistin resistant bacteria. Oh, what is this colistin? Is colistin where it is used? Is it a polymyxin group of bacteria? But like that, slowly the discussion should start. Ultimately, the teacher has to make the student understand what he wants at next.
Thank you, sir, for your patient answering. I think from today's talk, you have triggered the teachers to open new horizons, seeing new horizons of teaching and learning methodologies. And we had a great pleasure of your presence in our today's session, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your time. A lot of time. You are very busy. We know that. In spite of that, you have shared your precious time. Thank you so much for your.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting. Thanks, Gate College. Thanks to sir, the principal sir, right, Dhanraj sir, and Mr. John. Everybody has coordinated this. Thank you, Madam. Right. So thank you one and all. Thank you, Sundar sir. Right. I had a chance to meet you all through online. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, I'm going to end the session. Participants, see that your feedback form is already dropped in the Dropbox or Telegram. Tomorrow, sharp 10 a.m., we'll start the session. Thank you. With this, I'm going to end the session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good day, sir.
Thank you. Same to you.